So one of the things I do with onboarding and new hires is I ask them how many years experience they have in legal. And this is really an interesting bit of information, especially if I have multiple people in the group. And this is why I'm going to ask the question of you guys in the chat. So just put in how many years you've worked in legal. And Angela's going to do a quick summary since I can't see the chat.
Well, we've got a winner at 31 at the moment. 20 years, 26 years, 8 years. Oh, you're practically a baby, Lisa. 6, Naomi.
I can't see chat. I'm 40.
Okay.
You're winning at the moment, Richard. 30 plus. Jane, you're being a little bit cagey there. You don't want to. 100 years. Win.
Wow. And you look great for your age.
She started in the womb.
I think that's another winner. 3 days welcome. Leo, great to have you on board.
So the reason I asked this question of how many years of my new hires is showing them that I don't necessarily have the most experience in the room, right? You'll see in my slide when I start sharing, I've been at this 25 years. But when you have a whole group of people, there's a lot of years of experience there. And a lot of years of experience can be brought to the table. So it's kind of a fun icebreaker, I guess is the right term, when you're starting with a big session. Obviously, when you have one new person that's fresh out of law school, it's not as fun a game, but it is a lot of fun when you do have a group of people to see how many years collectively there is, which is a lot of years in this group.
I should hope there's numbers, shouldn't I?
If you add them up, you'll be impressed. There's a lot of experience here. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Is that okay?
Thank you. Yes. So, yes, I don't know, Joe, were you going to introduce our speakers today? Joe is one of our powerhouses in our Document Excellence Group Organising Committee and specifically the events group. So she has a couple of years experience yourself, educating.
No, hardly any. Hardly any experience.
But
anyway, very nice to see so many of you. Thanks for coming. We've got 2 speakers today. We've got Heather Morrow, who's going to talk about onboarding, which is obviously a critical topic for anyone involved in delivering training in a law firm. It seems to happen with amazing regularity, lots of churn within firms, lots of new starters. So it's a very important phase. What we're going to do is going to get Heather to talk about her role and how she handles onboarding. And then there'll be time for some questions with Heather, and then we're going to switch over and we're going to talk to Sherry Capel about document styles. Obviously, that's something that Document Excellence Group is all about. So she'll explain a little bit about how it came around and where we are today. So first of all, welcome, Heather. Thank you very much. And
can I just interrupt? So sorry, yeah. We are recording this. So if you want to take notes, that's fine, but we will share this on the website afterwards.
Yeah, thanks. Okay.
Thank you so much. Thanks, I appreciate it. So let me go ahead and share my screen. And as most of you are used to presenting, you'll know this takes a second to make sure you've got the right screen shared. And seeing my presentation okay?
Yes.
Thank you. Sorry, you go small, I can't see any of you. So today's presentation is on successfully onboarding new employees. As you can see, I note it is a team sport. So I'm really just detailing what I do, my team does, but there are other components that go into onboarding. Obviously, working with your HR is very important, along with other departments. So this is just my end of things. So get the slideshow going. So about me. So as I mentioned, I've been with Loeb & Loeb for 25 years, onboarding employees, surprisingly, the entire time. I have learned a lot from my failures and also from my wins. I've developed systems to make a successful experience for those who are coming into the firm. My goal is for me to not be training that same role in another 3 weeks or another month or another year. I want that person to be here long term, because I don't want to be repeating new hire over and over and over again. But at the end of the day, all they really care about is where is the bathroom. What I've realized, we only get a 3.5 hour window with them. So we've got a lot of content to cover. They're not going to remember it. Yeah, you're lucky if they remember a few things. But what's good about it is they'll figure it out in the morning. So, I let them know they can reach out to me, and we'll talk about the other resources that I provide to them as they start their onboarding journey with us at Low and Low. So our firm starts with a new hire announcement. I immediately schedule that training. We, for the most part, try to stick to a schedule of like the 9 a.m. start and finishing by 12:30 so the person can go to lunch. Unfortunately, sometimes the schedule does get foobarred by other departments wanting to take people to lunch early or other things that come up. So we do have some flexibility with it. But what we have found over the years of doing this is if we get the person after lunch, they are in the food coma. They're not going to remember anything at all. So if there's a choice of equipment, I recommend making sure that someone is reaching out to check with them on what type of equipment they want. With work remote, this becomes essential. Do they need monitors? Do they need a mouse? Do they need a laptop if they're working remote, or can they come in through Citrix? If there's no decision on the equipment, obviously that person doesn't need to be reached out to. Our IT does handle this. We work closely with them in terms of coordinating the equipment that's going to the user. So IT takes care of setting up the workstation. IT also logs in as them and checks the relevant applications work. So this has come out of the years of failures. So we actually have techs that check a checklist and they're responsible for it. So if I get into training and something's not working with the account, that tech is held responsible for that. There's nothing more embarrassing than something not working on the first day. So we really try to make sure that everything is solid with that. I also do have a tech available to reach out to the user, especially if they're remote, get them logged in on the first day and connected to my training. If I have multiple users, it can be very difficult for me to have to try to get all of them connected, especially in this day of working remote. So I start with welcoming them, similar to what I just did with all of you, asking how long they've been working in legal. I let them know what we're going to cover in training, what to expect, and then I run through what's mandatory. So we have training that's recorded, and they do have to do that. We like to have them get it done within a week. Of course, if they're lawyers, they get busy immediately. So I really reinforce that this type of training is mandatory. For us, it's security awareness, fire life safety training, respect in the workplace. I cover and reinforce what they need to know the next day. So for staff, they have to clock in. If they don't clock in and they call me and it's like an hour later, I can't make up that time for them. So I really reinforce, hey, get in, clock in. After that, you can call me and ask me any questions you want about how things work. But that clocking in is really important. I do encourage setting alarms on their phones to remind them to clock in and out. And some do take that advice and get in the habit of doing that. I let them know about any additional resources they can leverage to be successful. For us, the help desk is very important. I am always not available. I do webinars, I do other things. So letting that person know that they can reach out to the other resources because everyone's invested in their success. So I really do leverage their previous experience, asking them about what products they're already familiar with, kind of running through that. I customize it to make sure the learning meets their needs. I always try to teach them something they might not have learned elsewhere. There's just little things in Outlook that they might not have learned. Most people, depending on length of time in the workforce, they are familiar with Outlook, but Outlook isn't taught generally is what I find. So I often can find things that they didn't know about in Outlook that could save them time. I created a checklist. You're going to see that on our next screen here of the things they're responsible for learning. And this creates accountability on both sides. So the checklist, let me go ahead to it, serves as both a reminder for me and a reminder for the new hire on what was covered. So with the pandemic, we did take this checklist into DocuSign. And so we use a DocuSign template for this checklist. And it gets filled out as we're doing the new hire training, checking off what they accomplished. And then it gets sent to them. They have to sign off that they went through what we checked. And if it's not relevant to their role, we just don't check it off. So we kind of list everything that does have to be covered for every role, but sometimes we don't check those things off. So it routes to them, and then it comes back to the trainer after they've signed off that they had that new hire training, and we track then the mandatory training. Once they've completed all the mandatory training, we finalize this, and it gets sent back to the user so they have a copy, and it also gets sent to our HR departments. So we created a series of automatic emails that get sent out to the new hire throughout the 90 days. So initially, the first day, they get this, welcome email, but they also get one the second day for staff reminding them to clock in. And then they get one the third day, telling them about signatures and how those work. So what we did was we looked at all of the help desk tickets over the years and how the onboarding was asking questions, what questions were coming up. And what we discovered was they don't really care about redlining on day 2, right? On day 2, they care about their signature block, getting to know people, that type of thing. Maybe 2 weeks in, they care about redlining. So we send a reminder, and this is all automated. We send a reminder at that kind of point that we know that they're asking about redlining on the help desk tickets so that they are refreshed. We, of course, go through it in new hire, but as I mentioned, all they care about is where is the bathroom. So this series of emails, like I said, goes out. We created it in a product called Intap Flow. So it's a product that comes with Intap Open and that type of thing. It did take us a while to develop, looking at all the questions. We had all the training tips, so it was just a matter of plugging in the training tips to this. We branded it, and we talked to the new hire about the branding, because we're asking them not to click on things, but then we're sending them an email with things they're supposed to click on, right? So you've got a mixed message there. So being very clear about these are legit, they're coming from us. Myself and Adele are CC'd on them so that they know that they are a legit thing, that it's okay and safe to click on. So these go out throughout the 90 days. And then we also get emails, Adele and I get emails back letting us know where the user is and their new hire process. So we get an email at 30 days, 60 days, and 90 days, just reminding us that that user is at those points in their onboarding, and it gives us an opportunity to follow back up with the user. It's, again, all automated, so we don't even have to think about it, which is really nice. So I mentioned earlier, I do go over the additional resources. We have a SharePoint site that we have all of our training documentation on. We do also have a university site. However, what we found is it's better if all the materials are in one site. So even though our videos are launched through the university site, we have links from the SharePoint site. So they only have to come one place for the information. This is just a quick preview. There's tons of material on this page. 25 years is a lot of time to write things. We created a policy for our onboarding and ongoing process. The reason we did this was we had an auditor ask us what our process was for the new hires doing the security awareness training. And, I gave it some consideration. I thought, what, it's probably best that we actually do document our workflow and how we do onboard this process. And this has really helped really refine how we handle the onboarding process and our ongoing training. So we do offer ongoing training. It went to a weekly schedule with the pandemic, which actually I think has worked out pretty well. This is just a sample email that gets sent out with the links that they can register for the training sessions to continue to increase their skills. We also offer one-on-one coaching. There's a link to a list of things, and they're just small little topics, so like little 10-minute topics that if the person wants to reach out and get additional training on a topic, they can. I also started tracking the stats. So this is our 2023. This is a monthly, I generate this report monthly using Power BI. So taking all that data from our university site and plugging it into Power BI. And this really gives you a view of what's happening on a monthly basis and then what's happening obviously on a yearly basis. The monthly wasn't as interesting, so I included the yearly there on that. And again, that's using Power BI. So that is our onboarding process. So I will go ahead and open it up to questions. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can see everyone again.
I was hoping to be able to see the chat, but I can't see it, unfortunately. So Angela, I will have to ask you to spot
You're
any
muted.
questions.
Angela,
You're
you're muted.
Of course I am. I'm muting. Actually, the chat is pretty quiet as well, not just me. So I think everyone's just been absorbed in what you're saying, Heather. But now is your chance to ask questions or provide feedback on how you deal with onboarding people.
You're welcome to also unmute, or if you also have a fabulous idea I need to incorporate, I'm willing to hear it.
Hi, Heather. Thank you for that. Really
Sure.
enjoyed. I'm curious about how you handle, or if you are faced with sessions with mixed audiences, how you handle that.
Yes, and that's a great question. Thank you, John. So the way I handle it is the lowest common denominator. So unfortunately, if I have an assistant who has no experience and an attorney who has a lot of experience, I'll put the stuff that the attorney needs to know kind of towards the beginning and get that out of the way, get that attorney out practicing law, and then spend the additional time with the assistant. Sometimes we do have to schedule extra half hour here or there. I think both Adele, and she's on the call, Adele and I have been doing this so long, we have got those timings down for each, we've only got 30 minutes for this. So you gotta just buckle up and do it. But we have had where we have assistants that don't have any experience and we have to go back over and over again for additional training. So any other questions or comments? Oh, you're welcome. Thoughts?
We have one in the chat. Thank you, Kathy. She says, I may have missed this. If the training is not full day, are they back at their desk working? Is the expectation that once they're at their desk, they're expected to produce and support their lawyers?
Great question. So the lawyers, I would say, if they're a partner coming in, they're back at their desk. Yes. And we have no chance of getting them back again after they come back from their lunch because they have busy practices they're continuing to do. And we're grateful we get any time with them at all, actually. For an assistant, they would also have additional meetings, HR type meetings. So they would have their benefits. They might have a meeting with conflicts department. As I mentioned, it is a team sport. So there are other departments that do play into that. So the first and second day, generally they're booked with other meetings. An attorney would have a meeting with library, that type of thing. And that's all scheduled by HR. So great question.
Yeah. And Lisa puts in a comment, I'm lucky that I've managed to get multiple sessions with new joiners over a period of their first 4 weeks. Day one, as you described, and then the modules, mainly on the PMS. And it gives them chance to not have to be up and running straight away. And that kind of ties in with Sally's comments about running regular sessions as the new joiners may need to attend them over like the first 90 days. Is that something you do, Heather?
Yeah, so in that weekly training schedule that goes out, if we have a new joiner that's not familiar with styles or paragraph numbering or that type of thing, those classes do get scheduled. So Adele and I work closely to kind of make sure we're offering those classes we consider basic, and encouraging the users to go into them.
Excellent. Sally, is that something that you do as well? Additional courses over the first 90 days?
Hi, yeah, well, we're lucky enough to actually have an onboarding week. So
Nice.
we run all of those courses during the first week. What we find is it's quite difficult to get the lawyers to come back in again after that first week. So try and get that training in during that time. Well, we've got them, but then we're lucky to be able to get them for that amount of time.
It's amazing. I've never been able to get more time. And they try to cut into my time. Security decided they wanted to do another extra half hour of time on security. So they already have their recording, right? So that's a mandatory recording. That's an hour, and they want an extra half hour in person. And they started to push it towards me and Adele to do this session. I told them no, I was not giving up any of my time. They had to figure it out on their own and book it themselves.
I think you may have just answered Claire's question. How do you deal with the team pushing the new hires to do all the training in the first few days when you already have the timetable in place to suit the role? If you're defending the time when other teams like security want to take additional time, do you find you're defending and keeping hold of your time? That the new hires are under pressure to, yeah.
Yeah, I'm more successful in Los Angeles, where I have the personal relationships with HR. Chicago pushes back for Adele. We don't have anybody in Chicago, so Adele is in New York and I'm in LA. So we'll sometimes get some pushback on that, or from San Francisco. The smaller offices tend to push back on that schedule.
Yeah, I can imagine. There's so much demands on people's time and to get them up and running as soon as possible.
Right.
Janine has a good point. Do onboarders have coaches in their practice groups to ensure that they are assigned to reinforce what they have learned? I think that's an excellent suggestion, Janine.
Yes. Yeah, we do have mentors that are assigned. Sometimes those are more successful than other times.
Any other question? Janine's given us a thumbs up.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to present this information. And feel free to reach out to me personally if you have any additional questions.
Yeah, you're all welcome to email the info@docexcellence.com email address if you don't have Heather's contact details, and we can pass those messages on. Claire's got her hands up.
Hi there. My question is around the checklist that Heather showed on her slides. That's quite an interesting way of dealing with things. What do you do if the user doesn't send the checklist back to you? Do you chase them up once and then leave it, or do you continuously chase them? Or
I'm good at chasing people. We do chase them because we do have to turn that into HR. What was interesting was it used to be a very manual process. So we'd print that, fill it out manually. The user would check as we were going through training in person, right? And sometimes we'd lose track of that piece of paper. They'd take it back to their desk and we'd have follow up, and then we'd never get that piece of paper back. But HR would put it, copy it and put it in their file. And then with the pandemic, we went to doing it through DocuSign, and Adele and I kept copies of them. So they come back from DocuSign, we put them in iManage and our thing, but we stopped giving them to HR because there was nobody to give them to during the pandemic. And as we returned from the pandemic, I think HR realized they hadn't been getting the checklists. And so they're like, we need all the checklists. And luckily, we had a system in place. So it was really easy to pull them back and give them all
So
the
does-
checklists.
So does that checklist, is that as well as any sort of learning management system that you might use as well, which records attendance to training, or is that kind of instead of?
No, it's with it. So we just have one course in our learning management system. This is new hire training.
Okay.
It kind of has a summary of what we cover, but we tell the system they've gone through the training. So that's how I can do the Power BI stats on who's attended training and what type of roles they have. So I can get a overall picture of what's going on from month to month and then in the year.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a few comments in the chat about using DocuSign being an excellent idea for that form.
It's
great idea.
amazing. Yeah. It's really a game changer. And I update it. We have products change. Most of the checklist, I don't know how it was long enough on the screen, but most of the checklist is kind of the topic, not necessarily the product. So it's editing a PDF, not what tool gets used to editing a PDF, if that makes sense. And that actually helps us that we don't have to update the checklist as products change. But occasionally something does change and I have to go in and update it, and DocuSign makes that so easy.
I think
So
Crystal
Heather-
have a question. Is that right? Crystal, you've got your hand up.
Yes.
Oh, hi. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. I tried to put this in the chat. I apologize. And for some reason I was getting an error message, but the IT tech who builds the machine, has there been pushback on them kind of following up? And is there a procedure? I think you answered this part of the question. Like, is there a procedure for them to follow up? We've had issues with that.
Yeah, so I have a
Um,
checklist. I am a big fan of checklists. And a great book, if you haven't read it, is the Checklist Manifesto. Sherry's taken it. I probably got it recommended from her, but it's a great book. It's called the Checklist Manifesto. And it talks about different professions that use checklists and the importance of checklists, and how they can streamline. So that checklist details everything they have to check. And if we get into new hire and we realize that something didn't get checked, we can go back to them and say, hey, why don't you check this, right? But what's happened over time is they do the checklist and things don't work, and they write back to me or to Adele and say, hey, these things didn't work. And it gives us at least a little window to get those things fixed with the engineer or whoever needs to fix it. But it also sets it so we're not walking into the training with something that's not working, right? Because it's just embarrassing. You're like, well, it doesn't work for you, but everybody else it works for, right? There's nothing more embarrassing than that. So we really have worked hard at having the techs be responsible for that. They do check them generally. If the new hire's on Monday, they check it on Friday. So that at least gives us the weekend to kind of scramble forward. And they have to send us the checklist. They can't just do the checklist and never get it back to us. So they have to they have to check too. It's not in DocuSign. I could change that and make it in DocuSign.
Yeah, maybe you need to add that as well.
Yeah. We had been using checklists, but we just started using Monday.com, and people kind of the tendency to forget. But now that it's part of their weekly, they haven't forgotten, at least for this past week, they haven't forgotten, because we started it like the first full week of January. Just wondering if there was a pushback, because there's been a little bit of that there. Oh, I have a lot to do. Well, this is one of the things you need to do. I guess that's my feedback to them.
It's assigned by their manager. So,
yes.
So they have to, it's ticketed. They have to do the work. And so that I get CC'd on all the emails that say who it's assigned to, so I know who I can go back to. And if they send me the checklist. So if I have a problem, I'm a new hire and I have a problem, I'll get through the new hire. I'll manage. I can do a little dance, right? But then I'll go back to who did that checklist and be like, hey, how did this get missed? Why didn't you say anything? See something, say something is my motto on this. Like I said, it's team, and this is our first impression. The training is the first impression of the firm. And so if we look bad, the firm looks bad, right? And I'm, yeah, that's all I'll say
Very
on that.
important point.
No, that's great. Great. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Heather.